issues aside, Blake's family's skepticism also lay in a school employee who had claimed to police that Blake outran him when he tried to gather the boy up. Blake Wade Pursley would be 42 in 2021 and is listed in some places as an endangered runaway and in others as a non-family abduction. John Christopher Inman is considered an endangered runaway and would be 45 in 2021. He was thought to have been headed toward the Los Angeles area, though no sightings of him seem to have been reported. Investigators felt that if he was involved, Crummel likely would have befriended the boys and lured them away at some point, as opposed to kidnapping them outright. His suicide effectively ended the hopes that these disappearances could be connected to him. CEDU running Springs boarding schools eventually folded in 2005 under the weight of citations issued by the state, financial issues, and accusations of sexual abuse and physical abuse from both students and staff. For more information on teens missing from CEDU, specifically 16-year-old Danielle Ewan, who disappeared in 2004, check out The Lost Kids, wherever you get your podcasts, which I plan to do soon as well. This episode is brought to you by EveryPlate. Getting dinner on the table every night has got to be one of life's greatest annoyances, but with EveryPlate, America's best value meal plan, you can get ready for full plates and fuller wallets. Food delivery has never been easier, but the time spent waiting and the added fees that get piled onto each order can sometimes make the experience more frustrating than fulfilling. We've had some delicious meals over the past few weeks, with the cherry glazed meatballs coming in high on my list of things to eat in 2021. Recipes only take about half an hour to prepare and come complete with pre-portioned ingredients and easy-to-read instructions. I can get an entire meal done in less time than I'd usually spend in the grocery store, and without all of the extra items I didn't need to buy, which is money in the bank right there. Try EveryPlate for just $1.99 per meal plus an additional 20% off your next 2 boxes by going to everyplate.com and entering code WARBABY199. That's up to $100 value. Get started with EveryPlate for just $1.99 per meal plus an additional 20% off another 2 weeks by going to everyplate.com and entering code WARBABY199. In the few weeks since the Tough Love episode came out, there have been updates in the survivors' battles against the teen trauma industry that I wanted to fill you in on. First, Danielle Bregoli, also known as Bhad Bhabie, is expanding her statements on both Dr. Phil and Turnabout Ranch, and also offering public support for Hannah Archuleta's lawsuit. She released a video in partnership with #BreakingCodeSilence, boldly stating that if Dr. Phil doesn't apologize to her, Hannah, and all of the kids he sent to these ranches, she's going to handle it, quote, her way. I wouldn't be surprised if there's further civil litigation coming, aimed at these programs as the kids who live these experiences grow up. On March 9th, 2021, Boyd Householder, now 72, and his 55-year-old wife Stephanie were arrested and charged with more than 100 combined felonies and misdemeanors relating to their ownership and conduct at the Circle of Hope Girls Ranch and Boarding School in Humansville, Missouri. Stephanie Householder was charged with 11 felony abuse or neglect of a child charges, as well as 11 charges of endangering the welfare of a child. Her husband, Boyd Householder, is facing 79 felonies and 1 misdemeanor, including neglect of a child, sexual contact with a student, child molestation, statutory rape, and sodomy. Former students of the school, as well as the couple's own daughter Amanda, were instrumental in gaining visibility for their cause, which is to hold the householders criminally responsible for the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse they say occurred at the Circle of Hope. 16 women who used to live at the boarding school recounted being whipped or punched, being handcuffed or restrained with zip ties, forced labor, the maintaining of stress positions, physical abuse such as being pushed down the stairs or having hot sauce poured down their throats, solitary confinement with sensory deprivation, and sexual assault against minors up to and including rape. Boyd Householder is also accused of forcing one student to run a mile after drinking more than 6 liters of water. He pushed a girl's face down into horse manure and would also hold the students face down on the ground with his knee in their backs. The other girls would sometimes be forced to join in. The Circle of Hope Girls Ranch was started by the couple in 2006, after working at similar facilities in Florida. Once in Missouri, Boyd Householder was the head of staff at another religious school for troubled youth in the area, Agape Boarding School, which catered to boys. The couple's new school followed similar principles as their old school, heavily rooted in Christian homeschooling, manual labor, and torturous physical discipline. The biggest difference being that their school was for girls. Though complaints against the Circle of Hope began as soon as their first year open, one reason or another seemed to keep these allegations from ending in an investigation. Missouri has had no legislation regarding employees, inspections, or record-keeping at religious boarding schools, which is the case in South Carolina as well, making it easy for abuse to go unpunished by the state. In February of 2021, former residents of Agape, Circle of Hope, and other boarding schools around the country testified in support of HB 557 and HB 560, Missouri bills designed to offer at least some regulation of religious childcare facilities. After 14 years in operation, the Circle of Hope was shut down in August 2020, due heavily to the publicity Amanda drummed up on TikTok. Just a few months before, she had received a video clip from someone at the ranch that showed her father Boyd ordering a student to knock another student out. The informant also relayed that he'd seen some disturbing and abusive behavior being carried out by Boyd, prompting Amanda to become even more determined to hold the Circle of Hope accountable. The Cedar County Sheriff's Department ultimately contacted her after being inundated with correspondence from her followers on social media, and the criminal investigation finally began. 26 years after her parents began working in the troubled teen industry. In addition to the criminal charges, multiple students have filed civil lawsuits which include allegations of rape, starvation, and torture. Some former students even recount being made to sign a document that confirmed that they hadn't been abused there, and most did it out of fear that Boyd Householder wouldn't let them leave. Their defense attorney told the Kansas City Star, quote, "Neither Boyd nor Stephanie deserve to be in custody right now, and I'm hopeful they will be released on bond." Both Boyd and Stephanie firmly assert their innocence in these allegations. They're both extremely well thought of in the community. They have tremendous support. They're both very good people, church-going people, and they have outstanding reputations and spotless records. He's looking to have them released on bond, however, hearings were on hold as Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt requested a new judge, a motion which has been granted. He held a press conference to discuss the arrests, and I'm going to leave you here with that clip. Be back soon, but until then, lovelies, don't be scared.
Yesterday, my office filed 101 criminal charges and 1 misdemeanor charge against Boyd and Stephanie Householder, who are the former owners and operators of the now-defunct Circle of Hope Girls Ranch and Boarding School, once located in Humansville, Missouri. Boyd Householder was charged with 80 offenses, and Stephanie Householder was charged with 22. They are currently in the custody of the Vernon County Jail and will be arraigned later this afternoon. With 16 victims so far, we believe this to be one of the most widespread cases of sexual, physical, and mental abuse patterns against young girls and women in Missouri history. Again, Boyd Householder has been charged in Cedar County with 80 felony charges. This includes 6 counts of second-degree statutory rape, 7 counts of second-degree statutory sodomy, 6 counts of sexual contact with a student, 1 count of second-degree child molestation, 56 counts of abuse and neglect of a child, and 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. For the 22 charges we filed against Stephanie Householder, those include 10 Class D felonies for the abuse and neglect of a child, punishable of up to 7 years per count, and 12 Class E felonies for endangering the welfare of a child, punishable up to 4 years per count. As the father of 2 young girls, it is simply unthinkable to me that this type of behavior and abuse can be perpetrated against those who are so vulnerable, as well as on the families of the victims who entrusted their loved ones with the Circle of Hope Ranch. Through forensic interviews and statements of victims and extensive documentation seized from the property, we were able to piece together the extent and degree of the abuse that allegedly occurred at Circle of Hope. The allegations we are making include: one victim detailed the sexual abuse she received from Boyd Householder, beginning with inappropriate sexual comments, sexual touches, and progressing to oral sex and sexual intercourse. In separate interviews, 4 victims reported that defendant Boyd Householder taught the girls the, quote, proper way, end quote, to commit suicide, saying they should cut their wrists upward into the vein and not across. There were numerous reports of restraining the girls by means of zip ties and handcuffs, putting the victims on the ground and pushing on their heads and the back of their knees, taping their mouths shut with duct tape, or forcing dirty socks in the victims' mouths. On one occasion, and while restrained, a victim said the defendant put a dirty sock in her mouth and sprayed her face with a hose. The water went up her mouth, up her nose, and her mouth, making it difficult to breathe. On another occasion, a victim described getting restrained by defendant Boyd Householder for singing. He pulled the victim's arms behind her back, handcuffed her, pushed her down the stairs, and caused her to land on her face. One victim said that defendant Boyd Householder struck her in the head, grabbed her wrist and the back of her head, and shoved her head in horse manure, causing horse manure to get inside of her mouth. Another victim reported an incident in which defendant Boyd Householder punished her for drinking water from a spray bottle by forcing her to drink at least 220 ounces of water and then run a half a mile until she vomited. He then made her drink more water and run another half mile. In addition, punishments by the householders included being required to shovel manure for entire days, being forced to stand with their nose to the wall and hands behind their backs for days and weeks at a time, being locked up for days and weeks without a bed or lights, and being slapped, shoved, or hit with a paddle, belt, or whip. There are no words that I can say here today to describe the mix of great sadness, horror, disgust, and sympathy that I feel about these reports of cruel and almost unbelievable abuse and neglect. We intend to do everything within the power of this office to get justice for the 16 victims we've identified so far and their families, and to pursue truth and justice vigorously through our courts.